Hello, okay, welcome to my watercolour channel. Now, I'm not filming this from my studio, I'm actually standing here with Barcelona in the background, and I thought that was kind of appropriate because the sketchbook paintings that I did for this demonstration were inspired by a visit to Casa Batllo here in Barcelona. Okay, so I'll talk a bit more about that as we go along, but I really want to get straight into the painting demonstration now, and I'm going to be using a layering technique and also a watercolour medium called Aquapasto, which changes the consistency of the paint and makes it a bit more thicker, and you can then make marks in the paint as I'm doing here. But anyway, let's get started with the colours I used. I've got brown madder, burnt sienna, French ultramarine, Winsor lemon and cobalt blue. Okay, so I really like the sort of earthy reddish colours mixed with the green and blue that I saw at Casa Batllo, so that's why I chose these colours. And what I'm doing here in my sketchbook is I'm just experimenting with mixing some of these together to make my neutral tones. So I decided to do one larger painting on this side of the page first of all to test out some of these colours, and I just went in and I laid down some very neutral colours to start, and I then built up, and as I built up the layers I added more Aquapasto, which enabled me to make some marks, and then at the end I added my more saturated colours which turned out to be blue in this case. Now unfortunately I realised afterwards that this part of the video isn't quite in focus, but this will improve in a few minutes, so please bear with me. And for the paintings on the other side I'll be able to zoom in a bit more and give you a better idea of the texture of the Aquapasto. Okay, so I'm slowing it right down now while I add this area of brown madder. Now I've mixed the brown madder with the Aquapasto and I've added just a tiny amount of water, and as you can see this thickens the paint and reduces the flow, and I really love the effect of this. I think if you're layering watercolours it can add texture and interest to the painting, and you know this is a non-traditional method, but Aquapasto is actually made up mostly of gum arabic, so it's very much in keeping with watercolour paint, and I think it's a fantastic medium to experiment with if you're wanting to be a bit non-traditional and really push your watercolour painting and see what can be done with it. So for that area up at the top I actually just ended up running the brush through it and leaving the brush strokes on it, and then in other areas I got a silicone tool and I just scratched in some shapes onto the surface and moved the paint around a bit, so it was a lot of fun and I really was just experimenting, and I got to the end of this stage and I decided to add my colours. As you can see I'm putting some blue on top, and I'm just moving the paint around there. I did add a tiny bit of Aquapasto to this, but it's quite watery. Again, I wanted to get this sort of layered effect, so I'm just laying that paint on carefully on top, and I wasn't thinking too much about the forms that I was gonna do, but I knew at this stage that the painting needed something, a sort of bold move, so I decided to put some cobalt blue on top mixed with quite a bit more Aquapasto, which you can see there in my palette. And I also added these kind of sweeping lines in slightly thinner paint, but unfortunately I didn't actually film me doing that part. But anyway, once I'd done this I really felt like the painting was finished, which means that we've got to the best part, which is taking off the tape around the edge. So I did purposefully look at the colours of Casa Batllo when I did these paintings, but I didn't particularly look at the forms, although I was trying to keep this kind of organic, free feeling to my paintings. But when I looked at some photos afterwards I realised how subconsciously I had been really influenced by the forms of Casa Batllo. So for example the sort of sweeping blue curves are quite similar to the curve of the roof, and that blue area at the bottom left, later I was looking at this video and I saw this in the book that I had been looking at in the bookshop, and thought how similar my blue splodge looked to the splodge on the left hand mosaic in this book. Okay, so I took a bit of a breather and I decided to come back the next day, and when I looked at my sketchbook again, I decided that I really liked this painting, but I wanted to experiment a bit more with the greens, since this kind of mix of blues and greens had been my original intention. So I got my paints out again, which I sometimes carry around with me in this bag, because I always think I'm going to paint at home and I never do. But I'm setting up my paints again, and I'm using all the same colours, except that I didn't use the blue ultramarine this time. Now for the burnt sienna, I had to use my pans because I didn't have a tube, but I do think Aquapasto probably works better with tubes because you can get the paint to come out a bit thicker. Okay, so as I did with the first painting, I'm just laying down washes of colour in quite neutral colours to start with, and I'm going to skip parts of this footage because I don't want it to get too repetitive, and will skip more or less to the part where I started to make decisions about what colours to put on top of the base layers. But while I do that, I'll just put the music up for a bit. Okay, so I got to this point and I felt like I wanted to make some bold moves and make each rectangle different from one another, and it is looking a bit busy and the end result may look a bit busy, but I do want to experiment. I'm not really aiming for all of them to be perfectly harmonised. I just want to get ideas and have a bit of fun as well. So I'll put the music up while I do that, and then I'll jump in again at the end. I love these colours. Okay, so as you can see, to get to this point I did a lot of experimenting and it was really quite fun. It's hard to know whether to go through this even faster or even slower. I'm not really sure. Maybe you can let me know in the comments if you've got an opinion on that. So now it's time to take off the tape, and I'm really quite pleased with these. Like I said, maybe they ended up a tiny bit busy, but it doesn't matter because it's a page in my sketchbook and it's going to be a great reference for future work. It was mostly about an exploration of colour and mark making, and I do love the brown madder with the green at the top. So I'll be using that combination again in future paintings. Now if you're interested in more videos on Aquapasto, I've got a couple and I'll link one of them in particular at the end, and I'll put the other one in the description. And if you like this video, then please hit like, and if you want to see similar videos in the future, then please subscribe to my channel. Okay, thank you so much. Hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.